Welcome back to Education Matters. Did you correctly answer B1? In 2014, the state of Georgia became the first state in the country to cap the state's personal income tax rate by amending its constitution. They capped it actually at 6%. Now we're going to continue our discussion about the proposed constitutional amendment to permanently cap our state's tax rate with two business leaders. They are Vicki Lee Parker. Vicki is the executive director of the North Carolina Business Council. This is a statewide business association. Your members are very interested in issues such as sustainable economic growth, development, and education. So we'll talk a little bit more about your members. Kel Landis. Kel, you are the principal with Plexus Capital, which is a private equity firm. You are, I think when I first met you, you were the CEO of Centura, then RBC Centura Bank. So you've been in the very robust banking sector here in North Carolina. So thank you for being here, Kel. All right, Vicki, I want to talk to you first. We know that when businesses consider coming to North Carolina, they look at a lot of things, quality of public schools for one thing. What are your members, the small, medium, large businesses that are part of your association, what are their concerns or thoughts about something like this?
Well, Keith, as you can imagine, there are many. But particularly, we look at the education, the impact that it will have on funding the education. Our biggest assets for businesses are their workers, and they have for years relied on the state to produce skilled workers through our education system, and that's something that they shouldn't be burdened to have to worry about. They should be able to appreciate that. They've paid their taxes for that, and they expect to have those workers there. We have seen over the past few years with the current cuts that has eroded, and that there's now a struggle to find those skilled workers. And now with a tax cap, that's only likely to continue. And when you have your greatest asset under jeopardy like this, it really stands to pose a problem with businesses.
And we're talking about obviously we're talking about education because this is Education Matters, is what we talk about on the show. But I mean, it's certainly not a stretch to think that the biggest part of your budget is going to be the one that will be impacted. You were CEO, Kel. I mean, you're as a businessman, would you want to have something like this when you were trying to run an organization, sort of setting things more permanently in the future? So what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, certainly not. You would not want to have those constraints. And I'm here kind of as a business person, and I do not view this as political or partisan. To me, this is just good common business sense that we would want to have all the revenue sources at our disposal to make sure that we are investing in a prosperous future, because a prosperous future for our state creates a prosperous future for any business that is operating in our state.
Right. Now, I mean, your current role, your firm, you invest in businesses, so I assume that you're very tuned in to what businesses need. I mean, there's been some encouraging signs and some investments in North Carolina, but we've also seen some programs that support businesses that have been reduced too, because of investment. Sort of state investments and big picture, so what are your thoughts on what things like this sort of constrained revenue sources might have that would affect businesses?
Yeah, well, I think the states that are going to win, the ones that are going to have the most success, are going to be those that invest in their future, and education ought to be at the top of the list. Infrastructure would be other things as well, but we want to have a high quality of life for people to start and grow businesses in North Carolina, and no good business would say we're not ever going to raise prices or we're going to cap our fees for service. It would be like self-harnessing yourself in a straitjacket and locking it, to not have the flexibility to be able to invest in the future, both the opportunities as well as the threats, the unknown. The future is unknown. We want to create the best future we can for North Carolina, and we need to have the most flexible source and option set of revenues.
Is that consistent with what the businesses, your members tell you?
Absolutely. One of the key things that we're really concerned about is the idea that if we shortfall our funding from one area, it's going to be taken up in another area. So we're looking at the higher property taxes, higher sales taxes, and higher fees. And if our consumers have to pay more, that ultimately means less disposable income, and ultimately means less people buying the goods and services that our businesses are offering them. So it's a direct impact on our bottom line. So we look at this, and again, it's a very serious matter for us.
Yeah, so you mentioned, I hadn't really thought about that part of it. We've actually seen that already in the last few years. We have seen pretty significant corporate tax cuts and personal income tax cuts, but there have also seen pretty significant new fees and taxes. There are businesses, I assume some of your members, that are now sales taxes are now included. I mean, automotive services, movie tickets. Those are the kind of things I would guess that your members will be interested in.
Yeah, and in addition to having to pay more, it's more cumbersome on the businesses as well, those who have now to account for the collection of these fees. And so it adds even more paperwork for the businesses and makes it more onerous to do business. And it's layered. It's a layered impact on the businesses, how this trickled down to them.
Kel, should businesses be concerned about this? I mean, should business leaders be talking about this constitutional amendment?
Absolutely, and I would reference again the study in Colorado, or as a case study. Go read about Colorado and what happened there. I mean, there was an explosion of fees of all types, property tax increases, talks about threats to the state's bond rating, municipalities being forced to borrow money, possibly sometimes not in a prudent way, to just meet the needs of their community. So to invest in pre-K, K-12, community colleges, and our fine universities, we don't need to be going backwards, we need to be going forward.
Right, we're showing some stats on the screen right now about some of the sort of the decline in investment. So I guess just a final comment from you then. We need to, I guess we need to sort of, we don't need to pass this, I guess is what you're saying. We don't want to get this before voters, but if voters, they need to be thinking about the impact on their communities, right?
Yes, and just thinking about the investments, I mean, when we look at, we have 7,000 less teacher assistants than we did in 2010. Our investments in school technology and textbooks and supplies are down 40–50% from the last 7 or 8 years. I mean, we just cannot underinvest in what creates, as Vicki said, the educated workforce that we need to thrive for all businesses.
Right. So, well, look, this is an important topic. By the time this show airs, there'll be probably some movement in the legislature on it one way or the other, but then it may be on the ballot in November. We'll see. But we're going to continue these conversations over the next few weeks and months. But I appreciate your insights from a business perspective. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. After the break, this week's Leadership Spotlight.